pleasant environment, get ready for a healthy activity. Friendly atmosphere yields tremendous output. Poor surroundings, challenges of today's world. Melting glaciers, global warming is increasing.
बिस्मिल्लाहिर्रहमानिर्रहीम। अस्सलाम वालेकुम स्टूडेंट्स। उम्मीद करता हूँ कि आप सब लोग खैरियत के साथ होंगे एंड आई वेलकम यू ऑल हियर टुडे टू द 17th लेक्चर ऑफ एनवायरमेंटल साइकोलॉजी। स्टूडेंट्स, जिस तरह से हम हर दफ़ा करते हैं, आइए इस दफ़ा भी मैं आपको नए लेक्चर का आगाज़ करने से पहले एक छोटा सा रिव्यू देता चलूँ कि हमने अपने पिछले लेक्चर में क्या डिस्कस किया था। स्टूडेंट्स, हमारा पिछला लेक्चर के अंदर हमने डिस्कस करना शुरू किया था एनवायरमेंटल एटीट्यूड्स को, और एनवायरमेंटल एटीट्यूड्स के स्टार्ट में मैंने आपको बताया कि एटीट्यूड जब भी हम किसी चीज़ के बारे में बनाते हैं तो उस एटीट्यूड के पीछे काफ़ी सारी प्रोसेसिंग होती है। सबसे पहले हम उस ऑब्जेक्ट को परसीव करते हैं। उस ऑब्जेक्ट को परसीव करने के बाद वो जो इन्फॉर्मेशन किसी भी ऑब्जेक्ट के बारे में, विच मीन्स द ऑब्जेक्ट ऑफ एटीट्यूड, जब हमारे जहन में पहुंचती है तो हम उस इन्फॉर्मेशन को प्रोसेस करते हैं सो दैट वी कुड अंडरस्टैंड इट। और जब हम इस इन्फॉर्मेशन को प्रोसेस करते हैं तो फिर वो इन्फॉर्मेशन के साथ कोई सेंटिमेंटल मीनिंग अटैच हो जाता है, क्योंकि इंसानों का सेंट्रल नर्वस सिस्टम यूजुअली एंड मोस्टली परफॉर्म्स लाइक द सेंट्रल प्रोसेसिंग यूनिट ऑफ अ कंप्यूटर। अब कंप्यूटर के अंदर इनपुट डिवाइसेस काफ़ी सारे लगे हुए होते हैं। मिसाल के तौर पर आप CD-ROM के ज़रिए या ईमेल के ज़रिए या आप मुख्तलिफ़ किस्म की ड्राइव्स इस्तेमाल करके कंप्यूटर के सेंट्रल प्रोसेसिंग यूनिट के अंदर इंफॉर्मेशन पहुँचा रहे होते हैं, और कंप्यूटर के सेंट्रल प्रोसेसिंग यूनिट में उस इंफॉर्मेशन को प्रोसेस किया जाता है। बिल्कुल इसी तरह से इंसान जब किसी चीज़ को परसीव करते हैं तो इंसानों के भी मुख्तलिफ इनपुट डिवाइसेस हैं। ये इनपुट डिवाइसेस इंसानों की 5 सेंसेस हैं। इन 5 सेंसेस के ज़रिए जब हम इंफॉर्मेशन हासिल करते हैं और ये हमारे माइंड में पहुंचती है तो हम इसको बिल्कुल सेंट्रल प्रोसेसिंग यूनिट ऑफ अ कंप्यूटर की तरह प्रोसेस करते हैं अपने माइंड के अंदर। सो दिस इज़ कम्प्लीटली फंक्शनिंग लाइक अ कंप्यूटर। हाउएवर, देयर इज़ वन मेजर डिफरेंस बिटवीन द कंप्यूटर, द वे द कंप्यूटर्स वर्क एंड द वे द ह्यूमन माइंड वर्क्स। कंप्यूटर्स के अंदर आप किसी भी किस्म की इंफॉर्मेशन डाल सकते हैं, एंड कंप्यूटर्स वुड नेवर से येस और नो, और कंप्यूटर्स वुड नेवर टेल यू दैट आई डोंट लाइक दिस इंफॉर्मेशन, प्लीज डिलीट दिस। दिस नेवर हैपन्स इन द कंप्यूटर। हाउएवर, जब इंसान अपनी सेंसेस के जरिए इंफॉर्मेशन अपने जहन में पहुंचाते हैं और वो इंफॉर्मेशन प्रोसेस होती है और जानने के अमल में से गुजरती है, उसके साथ कोई ना कोई सेंटिमेंटल मीनिंग अटैच हो जाता है, और वो सेंटिमेंटल मीनिंग या तो पॉजिटिव होगा या नेगेटिव होगा। दरअसल लाइफ में हम जितनी भी चीज़ें देखते हैं उनको हम 2 बुनियादी एटीट्यूड्स के अंदर डिवाइड कर सकते हैं। आइदर वी लाइक द थिंग्स और वी डिसलाइक द थिंग्स। उसके बाद हम लाइकनेस और डिसलाइकनेस के मुख्तलिफ शेड्स डिफ़ाइन कर सकते हैं। मुख्तलिफ लेवल्स के ऊपर लाइकनेस और डिसलाइकनेस को भी डिफ़ाइन कर सकते हैं। स्टूडेंट्स, एटीट्यूड्स के बारे में पढ़ना इज़ अ वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट कॉन्सेप्ट इन साइकोलॉजी। मैटर ऑफ फैक्ट, there are a lot of theories available in psychology that have been propounded by different psychologists in different times in order to understand that how people come to form attitudes. However, before we get into that, we need to understand that what attitudes really are, and then we need to understand that what are the environmental attitudes. Students, जब हम attitudes की बात करते हैं तो attitude का मतलब होता है कि किसी भी चीज़ के बारे में जानना, उसके बारे में इंफॉर्मेशन हासिल करना, उसको फील करना, और फिर उस चीज़ के बारे में कोई फीलिंग रखना, मसलन लाइकनेस या डिसलाइकनेस की फीलिंग रखना, और फिर अपनी फीलिंग की बुनियाद के ऊपर उस ऑब्जेक्ट की तरफ एक ख़ास अंदाज में बिहेव करना। वी डिस्कस्ड इन द लास्ट लेक्चर दैट व्हेन वी टॉक अबाउट एनवायरमेंटल एटीट्यूड्स, दैट मीन्स वी ट्राई टू अंडरस्टैंड रिलेशनशिप्स अमंग्स द प्रोसेसेस ऑफ एनवायरमेंटल परसेप्शन, कॉग्निशन एंड इवैल्यूएशन। अगर आप गौर करें तो एनवायरमेंटल परसेप्शन, कॉग्निशन और इवैल्यूएशन, ये 3 टॉपिक्स थे जो इस चैप्टर के मेन टॉपिक्स थे, और हमने एनवायरमेंटल एटीट्यूड्स को डिस्कस करने से पहले इन 3 टॉपिक्स को डिटेल में स्टडी किया। सो ये सारे प्रोसेसेस किस तरह से आपस में इंटर रिलेट करते हैं, किस तरह से प्रोसेस करते हैं इंफॉर्मेशन को, learning about all of these processes will actually help us find out that how we build up our attitudes. Now, what are environmental attitudes? Now, when we talk about environmental attitude, it means that it is the way we think, feel, and behave towards our environment. And if we discuss environmental attitudes with the perspective of psychology, then since we are studying psychology as a science, that means we have to have everything scientifically explained, scientifically defined. This becomes very, very important for us. Now, when we discuss attitude in that frame of reference, it means कि किसी भी attitude के साथ cognitive part attach है, किसी भी attitude के साथ एक affective part attach है, और किसी भी attitude के ज़ेरे असर इंसान अपने behavior को design करते हैं. And like I told you before, that we have studied these three topics in detail in the preceding lectures related to this chapter, in which we discussed that how we come to perceive environment, how we evaluate environment positively or negatively, and from this point onwards we will discuss that after all that processing has been done, how we direct our behavioral patterns towards the objects of attitude. So let us first do a small review of the three components of attitudes. Number one is cognitive component. Cognitive component is the processes by which we perceive our environment and how the perceptual processes are involved in developing our cognition and understanding of the environment. It is naturally the way we are assimilating so much available information in our environment. Because in a lifetime, we are exposed to so many different scenarios, and we are constantly acting and reacting in this world in order to square a living out of it, that so much information is constantly coming down our way. Thou, God has equipped us with the best of the best instruments to have this information processed into our minds. We have the best gadgets available amongst all of the species that are existing on this planet Earth. However, those are not always right, which means that our sensory systems are not 100%. All the information that they communicate to us is not 100% accurate or exact information. So when we try to study, that becomes the cognitive component of the attitude. And when I say that 100% information is not there, then that means that all those errors or mistakes in the perceptions, or all those errors that we are making while we are processing this information in our mind, would help us build attitudes upon them. And if the information is wrong, maybe our attitude is not based upon the right information. And if our attitude is not based upon the right information, then probably it means that we are not reacting to the reality. We are actually reacting to what exists in our mind. And what exists in our mind is actually very, very different from the reality. So, students, that was the cognitive component. Like I told you before, all the information that gets into our mind gets attached with a sentimental or emotional meaning. जब हमारे ज़हन में किसी चीज़ के बारे में अच्छे या बुरे का ख्याल आता है, जैसा कि हमने एनवायरमेंटल इवैल्यूएशन के टॉपिक के अंदर इसको डिटेल में डिस्कस किया, तो उसके साथ ही साथ हमारे अंदर एक तहरीक पैदा होती है उस ऑब्जेक्ट की तरफ एक ख़ास तरीके से बिहेव करने में. अगर हम किसी चीज़ को पसंद नहीं करते तो हम यूजुअली उसको अवॉइड करने की कोशिश करते हैं, और वो सारी चीज़ें जो हमें अच्छी लगती हैं या जिनको हासिल करके या जिन एनवायरनमेंट्स में जाके हम प्लेजेंट फील करते हैं, हम चाहते हैं कि हम उन एनवायरनमेंट्स में बार बार जाएं, तो हमारा अप्रोच बिहेवियर उस एनवायरनमेंट की तरफ बनता जाता है. So, starting from the cognitive component of the attitude, which means getting all the information inside, we get into the affective component, which means attaching a sentimental meaning to it. Now, if a positive meaning is attached to it, then we would want to learn more about it. We would probably want to be in that environment more and more, which means that our approach towards that environment would be thoroughly motivated. However, if we have attached a negative meaning to that, then we would want to avoid that information. We would not want to learn more about it. We would probably come to associate a negative meaning with that, and ultimately and eventually a negative evaluation. Students, यहाँ पर मैं आपको इसकी एक छोटी सी मिसाल इस तरह से दे सकता हूँ कि हम मुख्तलिफ़ किस्म की मूवीज़ देखते हैं. बाज़ लोगों को कॉमेडी मूवीज़ पसंद होती हैं. Some people like adventure movies. Some people like movies that are full of violence. Then there are lots of kids who like cartoons. Now, when we are thinking about our movies and our preferences about the movies, what are those things in the movies that we like? Imagine if someone likes comedy movies and you get to watch him a movie that is full of violence. That person would come to say that I don't like this movie, because the information that is coming to his mind from that movie is attached while being processed in the mind is being attached with a very, very negative meaning, because this person has an attitude, a negative evaluation towards violence-related movies, and that gentleman would not want to watch that movie probably, or would not want to learn more about that movie. So frequently it happens that when there are violent scenes, people close their eyes, or people come up with different expressions of disgust or hatred or anger, that what is this going on? So they are attaching, they are reacting based upon the affective component of their attitude. And their attitude is that they do not like the violence-related movies. So relationship between environmental characteristics and emotional responses to a setting are very, very important. How we get the information about the environment, what are the characteristics present in the environment, and what are our emotional responses to those characteristics, that becomes very, very important. So these evaluative and emotional responses constitute the affective component of an environmental attitude. How we look at our environment. Do we like it or do we not like it? Finally, behavioral component. Behavioral component, after the information has been processed, it has been attached with a certain meaning, definitely we would guide our actions, reactions towards the object of that attitude. And our behavioral pattern would tell the world that we like this object or we do not like this object. A gentleman who loves watching comedy movies, if he's put upon to watch a violence-related movie, he would definitely exhibit certain kind of behavior based upon which you could always say that this gentleman is not enjoying the movie. He does not like violence-related movies. Students, that was the explanation of what the attitudes are composed of. Now, let us get into understanding that how these attitudes are formed. When we talk about the attitude formation, it always comes with learning. Learning का process पैदाइश से लेके end तक चलता जाता है. Learning का process दरअसल is our way to understand our world in better ways, is a way to understand our world in systematic fashion, so that we could design our actions and our behavioral patterns in that world in such a way कि हम उसके अंदर बेहतर तरीके से adjust कर सकें. जब हम अपनी दुनिया के अंदर बेहतर तरीके से adjust करते हैं, that means we are progressing in our life, we are happy with our life. So the process of learning actually never stops. और इस process of learning के दौरान अगर हम इस process of learning को attitude के different components के perspective में देखें, we could easily say that all those things that we like, we would like to approach them, and all those things that we dislike, we would like to forget about them, or we would like to avoid them. Similarly, all those experiences that are beautiful or pleasant, we would like to get those experiences over and over again. And all those experiences that are painful, we would want to forget about them. So how the attitudes are formed, it definitely comes through our understanding of how things are learned. और psychology में जब हम learning की बात करते हैं, we can never forget the three most important ways to learn, which are actually the three most important theories in psychology. Theory number one is operant conditioning. That goes to explain how people learn behavioral patterns. And then finally, there are ways to make observation learnings. Just like kids are watching their behavior, the behavioral patterns of their parents, significant others in their environments, and they are constantly copying those behavioral patterns, or they are constantly imitating those behavioral patterns. And by making this observation learning, they become the people that they are. They come to represent their families, and you could always say that this gentleman behaves like this, or this gentleman has certain attitude that goes to explain his preferences, his likenesses or dislikenesses in different environments towards different objects. So what exactly are attitudes? Attitudes की जब हम cognitive foundation की बात करते हैं, तो यहाँ पर दो चीज़ें बहुत important हैं. And remember here, cognition means making sense of the perception, making sense of all of the information that has come to our mind through using different input devices that are the five senses of the human beings. Based upon that information, we come to form our beliefs and values. Beliefs and values are very, very important components of attitudes. Now, like I told you before, that all of the information that comes to us, we attach a sentimental meaning with that. Now, if that information, when it is properly processed in the mind and it has taken the shape of beliefs and values, then we also attach positive or negative or whatever meanings to our beliefs and values also. Let us see what are beliefs. Beliefs के बारे में जब हम बात करते हैं तो आप beliefs को cognitive building blocks के तौर पर ले सकते हैं. Cognition is very, very important to move around in the world, to conduct ourselves in the world. Cognition is a big ball of learning that is in your mind and that is constantly guiding you and constantly directing you. This ball is actually consisting of small little pieces and fragments, and those small little pieces and fragments are actually the beliefs. Now, we can always come to differentiate between people based upon their beliefs. We could always say that a certain person is a very optimistic person. And when we say that a gentleman is optimistic person, हम उसके बारे में ये कह सकते हैं कि इन साहब के जितने भी beliefs हैं लाइफ के बारे में वो इतने positive हैं जिसकी वजह से ये हमेशा optimism का शिकार रहते हैं. When we look at different religions of the world, then we could always come to differentiate between the followers of different religions based upon their beliefs. People from one religion are practicing certain beliefs, and I mean to say that they are practicing certain beliefs, which means that belief is not something जो हमारे mind में passively exist कर रहे हैं. Beliefs have a huge action-oriented component. और लोगों के इन beliefs को दुनिया में जानने के लिए there is only one method, that they behave their beliefs, that they walk the talk. And once they are doing that, only then we can find out that this gentleman belongs to a certain religion. Similarly, we can differentiate people with reference to their political beliefs. Some people would prefer democracy, some people would prefer some other political system. However, even within democracy, people come to practice different types of beliefs. And there are different types of beliefs. When they are practicing that, they actually become the part of the political fraternity that is consisting of the people, of the followers of those different types of beliefs. In this world, we have seen many different types of political systems and many different types of government systems. Now, when we talk about individual human beings, they also have beliefs. Like some of the common beliefs that are found in everyone may be that if you work hard, you would be successful. You would progress in your life. If you always tell the truth, you would have a simple, peaceful, and satisfied life. Other beliefs are like we always behave with kindness towards the kids. We respect our elders. We respect our parents. And we fulfill our responsibilities and obligations as students, teachers, or as people who are performing different jobs or different functions. So, when it comes down to beliefs, we can differentiate people with reference to their unique beliefs. How do we actually do that? Belief is just a mental feeling that exists in the mind. That mental feeling gets materialized into the world through the behavioral patterns. People behave their beliefs in the real world. And when they are behaving their beliefs in the real world, that is how we come to find out that these people believe in these certain types of beliefs. When we talk about beliefs, students, we could discriminate between two types of beliefs. Number one is primitive beliefs, and number two is higher order beliefs. Now, what are primitive beliefs? Primitive beliefs हमारे अंदर कुछ ऐसे beliefs हैं जिनका हमें पता नहीं चलता कि ये हमारे जहन में पाए जाते हैं, लेकिन हम ऑटोमेटिकली उन beliefs के रेफरेंस से बिहेव करते हैं. ये बिलीफ हमारे अंदर एक नॉन कॉन्शियस स्टेट के ऊपर एग्जिस्ट कर रहे होते हैं. इसका मतलब ये है कि हम कभी भी इन बिलीफ्स को क्वेश्चन करने की कोशिश नहीं करते, बिकॉज वी ऑलवेज थिंक that these beliefs are 100% true and there is no question of criticizing those beliefs or taking them out. These are our primitive beliefs. Primitive beliefs हम learning के process के ज़रिए सीखते हैं. मिसाल के तौर पर बच्चे अपने वालिदैन के ऊपर बहुत ट्रस्ट करते हैं. बच्चे हमेशा ही समझते हैं कि उनके बाबा हर दुनिया का काम कर सकते हैं and whatever their mom is telling them is always true. They always think that whatever information their teachers are providing them is technically true and they trust upon them. Primitive beliefs may be non-conscious. However, they may be based upon direct experience also. Like as the kids are growing up, their relationship with their mother because right from the day one, they come to understand that there is only one person who fulfills all of their requirements. And that one person is the baby's mother. And babies come to trust their mothers 100%. And once they start trusting their mothers 100%, based upon this direct experience, they start building up the belief that whatever mothers tell us is 100% right. Mother is a 100% reliable person. You could always trust mothers, and you could always tell them everything or anything that is bothering you. And for all kinds of troubles in the world, there is only one person who's going to take care of you, and that is your mother. Now, simultaneously, this is one type of belief. Simultaneously, we build our beliefs based upon the constant processing of the information that is coming down our ways. We build our beliefs based upon the external reality also, which means that this kid who has been trusting upon the mother through the experience of being reared up by her, this belief can be easily carried forward into this kid's eventual ultimate beliefs towards the authority figures. When this kid grows up, when this kid becomes mature and he goes for different kinds of jobs, he finds out that authority figures can be relied upon, those can be trusted upon, because this kid's relationship with the mother was very, very good, and he could always trust upon the mother. And the mother was the first authority figure this kid could come to trust with. So every time this kid is approaching authority figures, his basic initial attitude is the attitude of trust. So students, you might have seen through this discussion that our beliefs are actually helping us learn about the world. And the process of building up the beliefs starts right from the day one in this world. And our beliefs could be primitive beliefs, which means that these are those hard and fast beliefs in our minds जिनको हम कभी भी question नहीं करते. We always think that these beliefs are true. However, these beliefs can carry us forward into the eventual big time beliefs, which could be higher order beliefs. Higher order beliefs include the assertion of a conscious premise in the thought process of arriving at a belief. I mean, this means that we are constantly building up different types of beliefs, and sometimes we want to come down to a certain type of belief. मिसाल के तौर पर आप लाइफ में मुख्तलिफ चीज़ों को प्रूव करना चाहते हैं. You might want to prove that you are a very, very brave person. And first of all, you would start with your own belief in your bravery, and then you would find out so many different types of things that actually are proving that you are brave. Now, a brave person is always forthright. A brave person always tells you the truth. A brave person always faces the challenge right from the front. A brave person never gives up. Now, there are different types of scripts that are being run into the concept of being brave, that are being run into the belief of being brave. Now, if we concentrate upon the rearing process, the way the parents raise up their kids, they are constantly telling their kids that, oh, you are a very brave boy. If you do it like this, you would be a very brave girl. So, parents are constantly teaching children about different types of beliefs, and then eventually they incorporate themselves into higher order beliefs. And sometimes we simply want to get down to a belief, and in this process we are taking different types of beliefs as stepping stones. For example, if someone says that air pollution is bad, then do you know how many different types of beliefs are present in air pollution? Of course, first of all, how did this person come to build up the idea of air pollution? Where is he getting that information? Now, if this gentleman believes that air pollution is bad, then that means that he also believes in all of those different sources that are providing information to this gentleman. He believes in the truthfulness of all those sources that are providing him with this information. Now, those sources could be government, could be media, could be simply editorials in the newspapers, or certain writers, or certain movies. So all those objects are actually creating certain kind of attitude in that gentleman, and his attitude, when we decompose it into the beliefs, we find out that this gentleman believes in all of those instruments or all of those subsequent beliefs. So one bigger belief is constituted by many different types of beliefs, and we can call them higher order beliefs. Higher order beliefs are not only deep, they are very broad also. Like you saw, जब हम एयर पोल्यूशन की बात करते हैं तो हमारा ये बिलीफ काफ़ी डिफरेंट टाइप्स के बिलीफ्स से मिलकर जन्म लेता है. काफ़ी डिफरेंट टाइप्स ऑफ बिलीफ्स हम इकट्ठे करते हैं एंड देन वी गेट डाउन टू दिस फाइनल बिलीफ दैट एयर पोल्यूशन इज बैड. Now you see, if you want to track down the evolution of this belief in a gentleman, you have to actually track down the history of all of those different types of beliefs that have gone into building up this eventual belief in this particular person. So beliefs are very, very deep. Now when we talk about depth in the belief, what does it mean? It means many premises leading to the same conclusion. We are constantly building up different types of understandings, and different types of understandings built up from different perspectives of life are all leading us towards the same belief. We consciously do it or we unconsciously do it, but we do it in order to strengthen our beliefs. Now simultaneously, beliefs have breadth also, which means that many syllogisms are leading to the same kind of belief. That goes to say that people are constantly trying to prove their beliefs. Like people might be having different kinds of beliefs towards the cars available to them in the market. If you look at the cars, market के अंदर मुख्तलिफ किस्म की गाड़ियाँ पाकिस्तान में लोगों को available हैं. Those are 1000cc cars, 800cc cars, or very big cars also. Now one person says that big cars are always safe, secure, they make you feel powerful, and they make you look richer. Now, you see, all these building blocks are actually adding towards the ultimate belief that this person has about the cars. These are different syllogisms that are helping him come down to the same conclusion over and over again. And when people come to have many different proofs about a certain object of the attitude, then their belief gets strengthened. They want to believe in that more and more. Now, the language of inherent beliefs may be inherently logical and rational. जब हम अपने beliefs बनाते हैं तो हम उसके अंदर एक logic या एक मंतक तलाश करने की कोशिश करते हैं और हम मंतकी process के ज़रिए beliefs तक पहुंचते हैं, which means that we are taking different logical steps to get down to one belief, like the air pollution belief or like the belief in the bigger, powerful cars is actually a complete evolution from step number one to the ultimate step where people stand and say, yes, I know air pollution is bad and air pollution should be eliminated. Or people might say, yes, I know bigger cars are more safe and more secure. Yes, I know that a certain organization or a certain company is very, very good. So people, if you ask people then why bigger cars are better, they would give you a very logical and coherent discussion on that. They would give you a good deal of critical appreciation. And you would feel that all these beliefs are based upon certain reason, certain logic. Do you think so? Well, that might not be the case always. While people are telling about their beliefs, और वो अपने belief को लॉजिक और रीज़न के ऊपर बेस करके आपको एक्सप्लेन करते हैं और मुख्तलिफ़ किस्म की रीज़न्स बताते हैं आपको उन बिलीव्स रखने के बारे में, इसका ये मतलब नहीं है कि लोगों के वो सारे बिलीव्स लॉजिकल हैं या रीज़नेबल हैं. इट डज़ नॉट मीन दैट पीपल आर फॉलोइंग लॉजिक और रीज़न इन बिल्डिंग अप देयर बिलीफ. समटाइम्स देयर हैपन्स अ डिस्क्रेपेंसी, एंड व्हेन देयर हैपन्स दिस डिस्क्रेपेंसी, दिस इज़ कॉल्ड साइकोलॉजिक. नाउ व्हाट इज़ साइकोलॉजिक? It is possible for one to believe that something is bad but still evaluate the thing favorably. Can you think of a situation like that? Like you could come to say that I like this person and I hate this person. Does it ever happen to you? Do you think that people come up with such sort of beliefs? क्या आप एक ऑब्जेक्ट के बारे में एक से ज़्यादा बिलीव्स रख सकते हैं? क्या आप किसी चीज़ को साइमल्टेनियसली पसंद भी कर सकते हैं और नापसंद भी कर सकते हैं? Is that possible? Can you think of an example? Of course. The entire world says that pollution is bad. Pollution is caused by uncontrolled industrialization. Now, all the people who are at the helm of the affairs, who are delivering industrialization into this modern world, they also believe that air pollution is bad. It is harmful for the health of the people, and yet they enjoy industrialization so much. So there is some kind of dichotomy here. There's some kind of discrepancy. They love industrialization and they don't like industrialization simultaneously. A very simple example, smoking. Smoking a cigarette, a person might say, I know that cigarettes are dangerous and harmful for health. Matter of fact, now they write on every cigarette pack that this is dangerous for health, it causes cancer or it causes heart disease, and yet a smoker enjoys the cigarette and he feels pleased about smoking cigarettes. So what is this? There are two divergent attitudes about the same object. This accounts for irrational beliefs that are internally consistent with an individual's cognitive structures, which means that we are definitely building up the cognitive structure on a certain reason. There is a foundation, certain foundation for that, and there is a proper structure for that, in which we go on fixing up different types of beliefs and components. But sometimes there are different striking beliefs that go opposing to each other with reference to same object. That means people like and dislike the same thing. And people think that they are basing their beliefs on reason or logic. Matter of fact, it is not like that at all. I hope you would have understood that when we discuss beliefs, then we can have different divergent types of beliefs about the same thing. Students, now let us take the story forward and let us try to understand that what are the values. Values are something that come out of the beliefs. These are certain preferences for certain end states. मिसाल के तौर पर एक बच्चा ये कह सकता है कि मैं बहुत बहादुर बच्चा हूँ. And you would say, how come you are a brave person? You see what? I get up early in the morning and I go for jogging. I go for exercise. And then I am 100% ready at the breakfast table. I am never late for the school. You see, I'm a brave person. I never miss out on my homework and I take care of my little brothers and sisters. I am a brave boy. Now, what is this kid trying to do? This kid is doing so many different things to get down to the end state. And what is the end state? The end state is being brave. Similarly, when we talk about values, values are preferences for certain end states. Now this kid has a value for bravery. इस बच्चे के ज़हन में bravery के बारे में एक value है और वो value दरअसल end state है. End state is bravery that this kid wants to become. He would like to be called a brave boy or a brave child. Similarly, if we talk about equality in the world, then that means equality is the end state that people who uphold this belief and who practice this value, they would like to see that there are equal opportunities available to all of the people in the world. So, values are actually preferences for certain end states. There are certain conclusions, there are certain objectives that we would like to achieve. And in order to achieve those objectives, we would be walking through a certain path. And when we would be walking through that certain path, then people can say or speak a certain popular corporate sector jargon that I am walking my talk. Holding an attitude is a means for attaining a certain end state. Attitude is the way to behave in certain ways. And that way to behave is actually driven by certain feelings, is driven by affective and cognitive components. Now, attitudes are actually the building blocks or the driving force or the fuel that help us reach down to the end state. That are our values. We practice our values. Students, through this discussion, you would have understood that how values constitute, how values help us guide our behavior, how based upon our values, we are actually constantly designing our behavior. And actually values is the end state where we want to get. I hope you would have understood the two most important components of the attitudes, which are beliefs and values. Now let us take the story forward. आइए ये देखते हैं कि यहाँ से आगे हम कहाँ पर जा सकते हैं. Students, जो next important topic इस reference में बनता है, that is, if we try to understand the affective basis of attitudes, which means कि attitudes के अंदर जो positive और negative meanings attach होते हैं वो किस तरह से attach होते हैं. दरअसल जब आप values की बात करते हैं तो every time an individual practices his or her values, he actually feels very pleased. He actually feels rewarded. Just like that kid says, I am a brave kid because I do this, and this, and doing this is actually getting down to be called a brave person. And when he is communicated by the external world that yes, you are actually brave, how does that kid feel? He definitely feels very pleased. And if he feels very pleased with that, then that means that all those activities that this kid is performing in order to be called brave are something that give him a lot of pleasure. And all those things that please us, हम उनको दोबारा से करने की कोशिश करते हैं. हम pleasant experiences को दोबारा हासिल करने की कोशिश करते हैं. Which is why it is only the logical consequence of our previous discussion that we try to understand that what is the affective basis of attitudes. जब हम attitudes की affective basis को समझने की कोशिश करते हैं, now remember this is very very mysterious. Information gets to your mind and certain positive or negative meaning is attached with that. Okay? Now जब हम affective basis को understand करने की कोशिश करते हैं, so यहाँ पर we are facilitated by Byrne and Clore reinforcement effect model. This is a great model to understand that how we feel good or bad about certain things. How we attach positive or negative meanings to different attitudes or to different objects of the attitudes. लेकिन इस मॉडल को समझने से पहले मैं आपको थोड़ा सा लर्निंग के बारे में बताना चाहूँगा. And like I mentioned the words instrumental conditioning and operant conditioning or classical conditioning and observational learning as well, in the start of the lecture, we will have to understand these concepts before we get down to the Byrne and Clore model. So let us discuss classical conditioning. Classical conditioning is a process that helps us understand learning. And classical conditioning, the concept of classical conditioning comes from the Russian psychologist whose name was Ivan Pavlov. And Ivan Pavlov conducted his famous experiments with the dogs. Those experiments are very, very interesting to note. What Ivan did was, he took a dog and every time the dog would get hungry on a certain time period of the day, let us suppose at the lunchtime period, he would find out that when the dog gets hungry, there are certain secretions in the stomach. The stomach juices start to flow, and they were getting all those readings through attaching different instruments with the dog's stomach. Ivan found out कि dogs जब भूखे होते हैं और उनको भूख महसूस होना शुरू होती है तो उस वक्त उनके stomach juices flow करना शुरू कर देते हैं और they start exhibiting certain physiological behavioral patterns through which you could find out that they are hungry. Now, every time a dog is hungry and you would show him the food, just visualizing the food, the dog would feel excited and his stomach juices would start flowing more. The stomach juices help digest the food. Now, what Ivan Pavlov did is that he first showed food to the dog and then he simultaneously rang a bell. Now, for the next few days, he always combined ringing the bell with showing the food. And you know what happened after some time? He would not show food to the dog, he would simply ring the bell and the dog's juices of the stomach would start flowing. Now, what is this? Food is something that is going to fulfill a biological need. If the dog is hungry, there is only one possible way to satiate that hunger, and that is having food. However, just ring the bell and have the dog's stomach juices flowing, that's kind of very, very interesting. Now, this is the basic principle of classical conditioning. In order to decipher this dog experiment with reference to the concepts of classical conditioning, I would like to tell you about certain terminologies. Those terminologies are, number one, conditioned stimulus. Conditioned stimuli are usually affectively neutral stimuli, which means that conditioned stimuli do not create any positive or negative emotion. For example, in the dog's experiment, the ringing of the bell is an effectively neutral stimulus, because when the dog is hungry, the ringing of the bell is not going to do anything. But the sight of the food is definitely going to do a lot. If the dog is getting his favorite food, then the response would be different. If dog is not getting his favorite food or some regular food, then the response would be different. But food is definitely unconditioned stimulus, which means that every time dog is hungry and dog is going to observe or watch food, he's going to have an effective response out of it. Now, do you see that what Ivan Pavlov did in his experiment was that he combined a conditioned stimulus with an unconditioned stimulus. Now, conditioned stimulus is something that is effectively neutral, and unconditioned stimulus is something that creates an effect. Now, after he paired both of these stimuli together for some time, he found out that the effectively neutral stimulus is now conditioned, because effectively neutral stimulus can also get the same type of response that an unconditioned stimulus is supposed to be creating. Now, if an effectively neutral stimulus, conditioned stimulus, is paired with stimulus that can elicit effective response, which means unconditioned stimulus, then the neutral stimuli will acquire the same ability to produce the response. Now, this is very, very interesting, students. Now, let us talk about, we have understood the unconditioned and conditioned stimulus, but we also need to discriminate or differentiate between the responses which would be elicited by the unconditioned stimulus or the conditioned stimulus. So we can always say that unconditioned response is the effective response to unconditioned stimulus. The dog's response to the food is the unconditioned response, but the dog's response to the ringing of the bell is conditioned response. This is the response that the dog has just learned. Now just focus upon the depth of this experiment. Ringing of the bell, and dog's body automatically reacts or behaves in the same way. Ringing of the bell would have never caused the dog to behave in the same fashion. Classical conditioning techniques were extensively used in order to train animals. However, classical conditioning techniques also gave a lot to the psychologists in order to understand that how the learning can be understood with reference to human behaviors. Students, when we talk about understanding the affective component of the environmental attitude, then the theory of classical conditioning helps us a lot. And matter of fact, Byrne and Clore model actually took the principles of classical conditioning in order to identify that what, how, and which way affective component is attached to the environmental attitude. I would like to take you to this model now. First of all, we can look at it as unconditioned stimulus. For example, एक unconditioned stimulus एक certain smell हो सकती है, एक certain noise हो सकती है. मिसाल के तौर पर अगर आप अपने घर में बैठे हुए हैं, तो आपके घर में एक certain smell हो सकती है. That could be the smell of the food, or that could be the smell of your house. And you don't really do anything about it. And there could be a certain noise or a certain sounds in the house, like cooking the food or watching the television. Everything is perfectly normal and neutral for you. As you can see on the slide, unconditioned stimulus could be odors or noise, मुख्तलिफ किस्म की खुशबू या noise, which is unconditioned, and then it may lead to unconditioned response. अगर आपको खुशबू पसंद नहीं है, it might cause you nausea. अगर आवाज़ आपको अच्छी नहीं लग रही या अच्छी लग रही है, तो ये आपको distraction cause कर सकती है. This will eventually lead you to evaluative response. Evaluative responses are usually conditioned. Now, you definitely do not like nausea. You would say, I dislike nausea. लेकिन noise ने जब आपके ज़हन में distraction पैदा की, तो you could be having any attitude about the noise. You could like it, you could dislike it, you could say, it is okay. Now, once this stimulus is conditioned, then what will happen? Let us see. Just the sight of the waste disposal will be enough to create nausea in your mind, because you would be able to imagine that there would be certain smell, and that smell would cause nausea. And I can just show you the picture of the waste disposal, and that would cause you nausea, which means that your response has been conditioned. Students, I hope you would have understood by now कि जब हम environment के अंदर अपने attitude बना रहे होते हैं या environmental attitude को study करते हैं, तो उसके अंदर अफेक्टिव कंपोनेंट जो है एनवायरनमेंट का, उसको हम कंडीशनिंग के प्रिंसिपल के हिसाब से बहुत बेहतर तरीके से समझ सकते हैं. आई होप यू वुड हैव अंडरस्टूड बाय नाउ that how and why we come to associate different types of meanings with different types of stimuli available in the environment. Matter of fact, like I said before, everything we see in this life, we either dislike it or we like it somehow. And thanks to Byrne and Clore model, using the classical conditioning principles, we now understand that why do we actually do that. Students, now let us take the story forward. And I would now like to talk about conditioning of affective components of environmental attitudes. हम environmental attitudes की conditioning किस तरह से कर सकते हैं? Environments are usually and typically neutral. If you are on a place that you are used to being at, everything is perfectly neutral. If you are sitting in your office, everything is normal, neutral. You are not noticing anything because things are not deviating from the absolute level or things are not deviating from the norm. We do not think about the environment if the stimulation levels are within the optimal range. जब चीज़ें नॉर्म के अंदर हैं तो हम environment के बारे में ज़्यादा सोचते नहीं हैं, हम नोटिस नहीं करते. बिल्कुल जिस तरह से हम गाड़ी चलाते हैं, आहिस्ता आहिस्ता हमें गाड़ी चलाने की इतनी आदत पड़ जाती है कि हम कभी नोटिस नहीं करते कि मैंने कितना गियर लगाया और मैं राइट टर्न और लेफ्ट टर्न. We simply automatically get to our home. But if some quality of the environment deviates from the norm or from optimal stimulation level, then negative affective response automatically occurs. When something goes wrong, when something drastically goes wrong, then negative affective response occurs. Then that means negative sentiments or negative evaluation of that environment starts coming to the mind of the people. Now, through association, the entire environment comes to elicit the same response. Just imagine that a gentleman is used to driving his car to his home from his office every other day. And this process is almost automatic for him. He's been doing it for such a long time that he does not have to think about it much. However, one day, as he was going to his home from his office, he happened to be seeing accident. And in that accident, he actually saw some very gruesome and disgusting scenes. Now, this gentleman might come to associate with that disgusting scene with this way that he uses to get to home. And next day, when he comes to be using this way to get to his home, the same kind of response starts coming to his mind. The same body starts behaving in the same way. In the way that his body behaved while he was feeling disgusted, while he was feeling that he has seen something really very gruesome. So the same anxiety or same stress might be starting to come to his mind by going on the same way again. So, another example could be something like that. Imagine a new student comes to a dorm school where this student stays for 24 hours. This is a hostel school, and the first day he gets to the hostel, he gets to his room. He just is watching his room and he finds out this beautiful desk. As he approaches the desk, he finds out that this desk is newly painted, and this kid does not like the smell of the paint. Now, the smell of the paint and the desk, the vision of the desk, they both get associated with each other. Because the smell of the paint would take a few days before it totally goes away, the kid might come to associate the desk with a bad smell, and every time he gets close to the desk, he gets the same bad response coming out of his body. Students, this was all about classical conditioning and how we can use the principles of classical conditioning to understand the affective component of the attitudes. Now, we can get to the next part of the lecture where we can discuss the behavioral basis of attitudes. Attitudes किस तरह से हमारे behavior को impact करते हैं. हम किस तरह से एक attitude के ज़रिए असर एक ख़ास तरीके से behave करते हैं. मिसाल के तौर पर अगर मुझे एक certain cold drink नहीं पसंद, so every time that someone brings that cold drink to me, my behavior would be that of avoidance. I would not like to drink this cold drink. So, this time round, we are trying to understand that what are the behavioral components of the attitudes and how we can discuss that. Now, it is very interesting that when we were trying to understand the affective component of attitude, we did it through classical conditioning principles. But when we are trying to understand the behavioral component of the attitude, then instrumental conditioning is more helpful for us to understand this type of learning, to understand the behavioral part. Operant conditioning was, or the principles or techniques of operant conditioning were understood and developed by the psychologist B.F. Skinner. Before I tell you about operant conditioning, let me give you a small example. It is usually seen that the behavioral pattern of pigeons to get their food in their beak is through the process of pegging, which means they are constantly pegging their food, they are constantly getting their beaks into their mouths. Now, B.F. Skinner performed one experiment. They put a pigeon into a box. In that small box, there was a button that this pigeon has to press. Now, the button is placed very close to the pigeon's beak, and all the pigeon has to do is to perform his pegging behavior on the button. However, the pigeon does not know that he is going to get his food only after this button has been pressed. The pigeon stays in the box for a while and eventually starts feeling hungry and starts looking around, searching around. And since he's hungry, the pigeon is hungry, he would get into this pegging behavior. And he started pegging the wall, and finally, eventually, he pegged on the button. Soon as he pegged on the button, the food dropped into the box that the pigeon could devour then. And eventually, the pigeon learned the behavioral pattern of pegging and finding out the button. So through this experiment, they found out that there are certain behavioral patterns that have instrumental value in teaching certain kind of attitudes to the people. Students, I hope you would have found this pigeon story very, very interesting and exciting. We would throw some more light on this story in our next lecture because right now we are running short of time. जाने से पहले मैं उम्मीद करता हूँ कि आप सब लोग खैरियत के साथ रहेंगे, अपने दोस्तों का और गिरदोनवा के लोगों का भी ख्याल रखिएगा. And next time when we come to the lecture, we will discuss instrumental conditioning in greater detail. मुझे इजाज़त दीजिए. अल्लाह हाफ़िज़.